guys, and welcome to Edge-CGI. This is the third video of my T-Rex sculpting series. In this video I'll teach you some of the basics of hard surface sculpting in ZBrush, and video number 4 will cover some more advanced techniques. So the most basic thing to know is that you can go ahead and use any brush to build up form. I prefer to use the clay build-up brush and just build up various forms. And then you can switch to the H-polish brush. So normally when you press B to access your brushes and then press a key like C, for example, it will show you all the brushes that have C, that begin with C. However, in the case of H-polish, when you press H, it automatically selects H-polish because that's the only brush that begins with H by default. So H-polish stands for hard polish, and what this will do, this will flatten out parts of your sculpt while trying to maintain the edges. So you can see here, as I use it here, it flattens this area out but tries to maintain these edges. And you, by moving your brush and using it various ways, you can determine where the edges will go. And by default the intensity is 37, so let's go ahead and press U and then click on the slider, move it all the way to the right, and increase our intensity to 100 to make sure that the H-polish brush works a little bit faster. And then you just go ahead and flatten out various parts to get some hard surface sculpting. Now ZBrush has a lot of new features for hard surface detailing. Some relatively new features, and I will show you that in the next video. This video will cover the basics. You can also use a brush like either Damien Standard or the /3 brush to create these kinds of indentations, this kind of paneling effect. I'm going to go ahead and press Ctrl D, and then you can of course also go back with the H-polish brush and polish out those areas to get more of a hard surface look. And you can use Damien Standard to also define the edges of your geometry. And go back with the H-polish and polish it up and further define the flat areas and the edges. So as you can see, we've already got some nice hard surface details being sculpted, and we can just continue in this fashion and sculpt a cybernetic part for our dinosaur. So I will be sculpting a cybernetic arm for a T-Rex here. So what I'll do first of all, to maximize efficiency, is to make a duplicate of this dinosaur model. And here it is right here, and I'll go ahead and click on this eye to isolate this geometry, this subtool. So first of all, I'll go ahead under layers, and here's my previous layer called scales. I'm going to go ahead and click on bake all, and this is going to get rid of the layer. It's going to bake the layer into the actual geometry, so it gets rid of the layer. And now I'll go into the geometry tab, and I'll go ahead and lower the resolution. You can also press Shift D, and I'll click on delete higher. This will delete all the higher subdivision levels. Now I'll go ahead and press Ctrl Shift and make sure that I've got the select lasso tool, and I'll go ahead and lasso this area so we only have this visible. Alright, now I'll go ahead under Modify Topology. I'll go ahead and click on Del Hidden, which will delete the hidden geometry. So now we have 3 subtools. We have the dinosaur, we have his eye, and we have just the arms. And I'll be giving him a robotic mechanical arm, and we can do it on both sides, or we can just have one side, in which case I can hold Ctrl Shift and select the left side and click on Delete Hidden again to delete that. And if I go back to my regular dinosaur, I can hide his arm. So I don't want to delete it, I can just hide it. So I'll go ahead and hold Ctrl Shift, position my camera or position the subtool, hold Ctrl Shift Alt, and just hide that. And now I can click on the arm subtool and I'll be able to see my mechanical arm. Alright, so let's go ahead and begin our sculpting. As you can see, I'm just starting with the clay build-up brush. I use the clay build-up brush in close conjunction with the H-polish brush. And I'm just using those brushes together along with the Damien Standard and the /3 brush. The difference between Damien Standard and /3 is that /3 is a little bit stronger, whereas Damien Standard is much more fine and precise. So I highly encourage you to try both of those brushes and see which one works for you in different situations. And there's also different slash brushes to try as well, like /1, /2, and you can even use the standard brush. If you activate the standard brush and change the focal shift around, you will get a similar result. So you have a lot of brushes to use when it comes to getting these kinds of paneling effects. And in the next video, I'll introduce even more tools that we can use to give ourselves an easier time of creating panels. So the whole purpose of this sculpt is it's a concept sculpt. It's something very quick and relatively rough, but it will allow you to have an idea of what your final product will be. A lot of times when you're working, for a director or for someone who's not necessarily a 3D artist, you want to give them a preview. You want to give them various concepts as soon as you can. So in this video, we're not creating a final result. We're creating a quick sculpt to present to the director, for example, and to get their approval. And that's why we don't want to spend hours and days on this, because the director might say, I don't like this, redo it, or change this around. Or he might say that, I like the direction, I like what we've done here, here, and here, but I want you to change these areas. So you don't want to spend too much time on this yet. So in this part, these are these fibers that connect the shoulder to the rest of the body, and this is an area that connects the bicep and the forearm. So the arm, the mechanical arm, may be made up of different materials. So some of these materials, some of these objects may be flexible. And here I'm just working with different shapes and trying to figure out which areas to flatten, which areas to pull. Sometimes the best thing you can do is use the move tool. If no other brush seems to be working for you, try using the move brush. Move or move topological. And the H-polish brush is pretty great for this kind of thing, where you can get some interesting results very quickly with the H-polish brush. And you can also use the S-polish brush, soft polish, to have a similar effect but a lot softer. And at this point, it's all about deciding where the panels will go. Later on, we can add more practicality to this. And in the next video in particular, I'll show you how we can insert objects here, like cylindrical objects that are clearly joints for the character to use, for the arm to use. For now, we're just dealing with more simpler plating. We're just determining what kind of look we want for this arm. And there are many different ways you can sculpt this, many different looks you can achieve, but here we'll be going with more of a classic cybernetic plated arm look. And in the next video, I'll show you how we can insert different tubes, different tubing and pipes into our hard surface sculpts as well. So I decided to give him get rid of the claw area and just give him a metal replacement for the claw. One of the things I forgot to do, is that you can actually make his arms larger than a regular Tyrannosaurus Rex. Logically speaking, from a game design, from a story design perspective, one of the biggest reasons you would give a Tyrannosaurus Rex mechanical arms is because his natural arms are very stumpy. They don't have a lot of reach, they're very weak. So one of the biggest reasons you would give a T-Rex mechanical arms is to give him that power and that reach that he otherwise would not have. So what you can actually do is you can actually use the transpose tool, scale, and scale the arms out and give him these large mechanical claws, like actually make his arms useful, have an actual use. So that's one thing you can do that I did not do in this video. So it's just one of those oversights, and if I were to present this to a director, he would ask me, for example, what's the point of having mechanical arms in the T-Rex? If they're the same size, they're not going to accomplish much. So why don't you go ahead and make the arms bigger? And that would be a very good piece of criticism that a director would have, or a story writer, or whoever you're sending this to approval, or even yourself. And of course, that's one of the reasons that we're not spending too much time polishing this, because chances are there's a lot of things we'll have to change later on. So we're keeping it relatively light and relatively simple. One more brush you can use is the pinch brush, and just as the name implies, it will pinch your geometry together. It's great for getting sharper edges. And here I'm using the move tool to further define the form, get exactly the form I would like, and just going back and polishing different areas. Here I'm using the clay buildup brush because sometimes when you use the polish brushes, the area will become too recessed. It will become too lumpy or too not quite flat enough. It will create kind of a hole, a dent. So you want to push that out. You want to insert some clay in there and then flatten it again. And here using the move tool along with the H polish brush to kind of make this area more rectangular, more straight. And here I'm using the standard brush with the drag rectangle stroke type and just a circular alpha to get those kinds of holes. And in video number 4, I'll show you how we can use the insert multi-mesh brushes to actually put something in those holes. But for now, we're just creating these holes. And maybe those screw into the organic part of the T-Rex, or maybe pipes go into them. So there's a lot of possibilities for what we can do with those holes. But for now, we just want to go ahead and establish them. And here I'm not quite satisfied with that curve, so I'm going ahead and putting some more clay in there and then flattening it out, moving it. And what I did a few seconds ago was I used the Damon standard brush, except I held Alt down to give a sharper edge. Here what I'm doing is I'm masking off this finger, and I'm masking off the full finger. And then I will go into polygroups and group masked, so that finger have a separate mask. I pressed and held Control Shift and clicked on that area, and then I went into delete hidden, and so I deleted the hidden area. And what I'll do now is I'll create a duplicate, and once again I will hold Control Shift, mask that area off, or have only that area be visible. And so I'll delete the hidden geometry, I'll move that out. I go under Z plugin at the top, and then Subtool Master, and then I use the mirror tool to mirror that finger. And then you can use the Dynamesh tool, and that would, when you have holes, the Dynamesh tool will close those holes. So when you have just various pieces that have large holes in them, the Dynamesh tool will automatically close those gaps, fill in the holes. So I basically did that to have the same finger on the other side. And here I'm spending more time on this area, just trying to get the shape of things right. So basically, whenever you have a piece that you wish to duplicate, what you do is you duplicate that piece, you hold Control Shift and select the piece that you like, and then you go into Delete Hidden, and then you duplicate that along your sculpt. And so that can save you the time, and it can also be used for precision if you want the same exact piece to be spread throughout your model. And that is helpful on things like fingers and other details that you want to be instanced or placed around your sculpt. And this right here is a great way of getting the shape that you like. First you mask it, and then you use H-polish on the masked part. And so H-polish will polish only that part, thus getting the flat area that you would like. And here I'm just using the pinch brush, I think. The pinch brush along with Damien Standard, just further defining the plating. And here I'm using the standard brush. Here I'm using the layer brush. The layer brush with a round alpha, as you can see on the top left, to get these kinds. Here I am masking off this area. I increased the focal shift or decreased it to get a sharper fall off when I use the masking brush. And here I'm just masking various shapes in here. This is a great way of quickly getting these kinds of indentated parts. Mask it off, hold Control and then Alt to invert your mask pen brush, and just clean it up a little bit, and then I hold Control and click on an empty area to invert it, and then I'm using the layer brush to push it inward. You can also go under deformations and inflate it inwards. And to smooth the area out, you can use also deformations. You can use relax or smooth, but here I'm just using the smooth brush. And once again, the purpose of this is to create a quick sculpt to present to the director or the artistic lead, so for them to comment on it and tell us if they want to keep this or which parts they want to change. We don't want to spend too much time refining it at this stage. Thank you for watching Edge-CGI. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with future videos, and stay tuned for part 4 where things get a lot more interesting.